How long have you known Mr. 7 years? 7 years. What kind of a man did you know him as?
Well, a man is a nice man, just like anybody else. The only difference I'd say in the man, he seems to be a little hot.
Hello, welcome to the Halloween special. Happy spooky season. Today we're going to be talking about Ed Gein. Now, Ed Gein is a name that actually echoes into later generations as he's kind of immortalized in a lot of movies, such as Chainsaw Massacre, Silence of the Lambs, and also Psycho. Now, Psycho is reflecting Ed's psychological relationship with his mother. So go ahead and grab your brew and join me as I talk about this sick individual. Now, Ed did many things like Jeffrey Dahmer in terms of what he did with the bodies after he killed them. I would say he was deeply impacted by his mother's idolizations growing up. And I would kind of say that is a serious understatement because when she died, he dug up her grave to wear her skins as a suit. Let that sink in. He dug up his mother's body, removed her skin, and wore her skin. Ed was born in 1926 in La Crosse, Wisconsin, to his mother Augusta and father George. He had an older brother also by the name of Henry. His mother managed a local grocery store. She was extremely open about her hatred for her husband, the boy's father. He was an alcoholic and she just wouldn't leave him due to her religion. Now, I am religious, but you need to cut ties at one point. And also, as crazy as this woman is with her ideologies, I think I would be taking a shot or two as well. When Ed was 8, they would move to Plainfield, Wisconsin, and they were only allowed to go to school and home. They were not allowed to socialize at all. The only thing they could do was go to school, come home, do chores on the farm. They weren't allowed to have friends. And she would constantly preach about the immorality and how people are alcoholics and all women are prostitutes and the devil. But of course, not her. She's the only woman on this earth that's not a prostitute. How convenient, right? And she would read from the Bible every day, which sounds good. I do, especially if you like tea, as much as people say, "Oh, I don't want to read the Bible; it's boring." If you read it with a open mind, like even read it as if it's not a Bible, it's a story. The Bible does have some juicy tea. But anyway, I digress. But she would cherry pick only extremely graphic parts about death and murder and sins, and she would just like piece it together. She basically cut everything good out of the Bible and go from one extreme to extreme to extreme. And she would constantly tell his sons about how they were destined to be failures just like their father. Now, their father died in 1940 of a heart attack. I wonder why. But this led to the boys having to do odd jobs outside of school to help bring them money for their mother. Now, Henry was out of the house the most because he was older and he would babysit the local children, the neighbors' kids. And being exposed to the outside world, it caused him to be. I wouldn't. Many say it caused him to be a rebel, but I wouldn't say a rebel. I would say he was seeing the truth outside of his mother's grasp. And he also noticed the relationship between his mother and brother was extremely weird. And he was just starting to reject his mother's world views. May 16th, 1944, a fire broke out near the farm, and the brothers went to go extinguish the fire. Now, when the fire was put out, allegedly at the time, Ed lost sight of Henry, his older brother, and he went to go report him missing to the police. However, this is where it gets strange because, of course, the police go ahead and form a search party. And when the search party came out, Ed just conveniently led them straight to his brother's body. Doesn't seem like you've lost him very much there if you led them straight to their body. But the police also had more concerns than that. The ground around the body was completely untouched by the fire, and there was even bruises on his head. Some of the police did suspect that Ed killed his brother, but for some reason no charges were brought against him. And had they had been, this story would not be happening right now. But now his brother's passed, he's left alone with Mama Dearest, right? And I think that was his plan all along. He wanted to be alone with his mother. Or even now, there's nothing documented about this, but when I was doing my research, it's like, well, did the mother want him out of the way too? Because he's the only one rebelling, because Ed is listening to his mum, right? Where Henry was starting to realize that she's full of shit, and the outside world proved that to him. But I don't know. His mum did eventually pass away following like a series of strokes, and Henry boarded up all parts of the farmhouse that were associated with her, almost like a tomb for her. He pretty much only used the kitchen, and he made himself a small bedroom for him to basically just sleep in there. So you got this entire house, but you're living out of the kitchen in a small bedroom. Now, it was said by a lot of people that he really did love his mom, but he probably hated her too, if you think about it, due to his raisings. It was said that when she passed away, he lost his only friend and his true love, which is kind of sick if you think about it. Now, on this same year, Ed would go out and shoot and kill a Mary Hope, local tavern owner, who was also known as Bloody Mary because she was basically known for not taking no shit from anybody. Obviously, she's dealing with drunk men all the time. She would put her foot down, put people in their place. She was a very strong woman, much like his mother. But she also didn't have any family around. She was there by herself, so I guess this made her an easy target for Ed. She was reported missing and nobody could find her. And when people would talk about her disappearance, Ed would have this almost creepy smile and say, "She's not missing, she's at my home right now." They just dismissed it as Ed being his weird self. Mm. During this time, an 8-year-old Georgia Witter went missing on her way home from school. Also, 15-year-old Heather Harty was abducted while babysitting. Now, people aren't sure if the two are tied, but it would make sense that it all happened around this time. But in 1957, Arthur Shuley, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, I'm just going to refer to him as Sheriff Arthur, but he made his way to an old farmhouse in Plainfield, Wisconsin. He had a warrant in hand to search the property for another woman that was reported missing by her son earlier that day. When he went to the hardware store that this lady owned, he would find a missing cash register, a trail of blood, and a receipt on the floor and a missing Bernice Warden. Now, she was well known by the community. She owned Warden's hardware store, one of the oldest businesses in the community, which she managed alone because when her husband passed, they were pretty young when he passed away. And she raised both her children by herself and never remarried, which is hard back in those days because, a lot of women weren't single parents back then. But luckily, she continued to manage the hardware store and raise her two children alone, and that was Frank and Miriam. She was the first woman in the town to actually get the Citizen Award of the Week, and she was well loved by many. She was a pillar in their community. Her son Frank is the one who reported her missing. He was actually the deputy to Sheriff Arthur. In that day, Frank had happened to go on a hunting trip with many of the men from the town, and this was the 17th of November. And when he returned, he found his mother missing in a bloody scene at the store. And he did remember that his mother mentioned to him that one of the locals was hanging out at the store a lot. A lot, a lot. And of course, who was this man? None other than Ed Gein. Ed had asked Frank where he would be that day as well, which is very suspicious, right? You asked where I would be that day, and then my mother comes up missing. But he said he would be back to buy antifreeze from the store later that day. Ed did. He said he would be back. And what was on the receipt on the floor? Antifreeze. Frank wanted Arthur to pay this creep a visit. And this is how Arthur arrived at the farmhouse of Ed Gein that day. He knocked on the door, but nobody was home. And when he entered the building, because of course, keep in mind he has a warrant in hand, so he can legally go into the property. And he was looking around, but there was no power at the farm at all. So he used his flashlight and made his way through an extremely cluttered house. Ed had boarded up all of the rooms, like I said, that he shared with his mother once upon a time. So I don't know if he got into that part. I know at this moment he probably didn't. But he did go outside and check the shed. Now, when he got to the shed, he found something absolutely horrific. It was Bernice, and she was hung upside down from the ceiling and had been butchered like a deer. And this was after she'd been shot with a 22 caliber rifle. And as terrible as this is, unfortunately, it was just the start of this true house of horrors. Now, it was also found that he had been visiting graveyards at night and digging up bodies of women that resembled his mother. And he would just take them home. He would keep them. And even some of their body parts. Like it's. Mm, In particular, the skins, which he would tan and sew and create a woman's suit. Create a woman's suit. It was thought by some that he was trying to bring his mother back by embodying her. And this was also shown in the Hitchcock movie Psycho. Now, I do want to give a trigger warning if you're particularly squeamish, because this next part is a little graphic and it does go into the findings inside of the house. So just go ahead and skip about 2 minutes, and if you need to skip altogether, it's okay. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on the next one. Now, when backup was called and they went in to search the house fully, what they found was extremely horrific. They found 4 noses, 9 human bones, and 4 masks made of human skin, a bowl made of human skulls, 10 women's heads with the top sawn off, human skins covering the chairs, like leather, basically. And remember Bernice? Her head was in a bird sack. Skulls on top of the bedposts, and organs in his refrigerator. Like, that's normal. Just put organs in your refrigerator. He had a pair of lips on the drawstring on the windows. For the window shades, he put lips on there as the drawstring. And a belt made out of human nipples. Yes, a belt made out of human nipples. And a lampshade made from the skins of a human face. And they also found Mary Hogan's missing head, the innkeeper, in a paper bag. They had also seen shrunken heads inside the house, which he said that were gifts, souvenirs from Asia. I don't know much about that. Now, when he was arrested, Ed did admit to shooting Mary that night after the tavern closed, and he admitted taking her home. He also admitted to shooting Bernice and taking her home in his truck. However, his first confession was admissible in court because, due to Arthur gaining rage, he actually, to get this confession out of him, he smashed his head into a wall during the investigation. But after seeing all of that, who could blame him being enraged? But again, should not respond with anger, I guess. But because of this, it was actually his initial confession was thrown out of court.
Oh, the head and the sexual part.
Yeah, but
What would you do with the sexual part?
that was in.
One was painted, they said.
Oh, that one, when they died, I just put the paint over it. Is everything right,
So there's a bunch of photographers from the newspapers want to take a picture. You want to take a picture?
No, that's not yet. We'll get to state law.
Would you enjoy it while you were doing it?
That's the worst part of it. I really didn't then. I knew better in life, restless.
When you dig these graves up, you were kind of in a haze too, is that it?
That's what I could do. Just how you look at it.
And then one time you said you were trying to realize what you were doing and you covered her up without taking anything.
That's right.
Then what would you do with the head?
That must have been taken from reading about these magazines and everything. Taking the flesh off like that headhunter.
What would you do with the sexual parts?
I wouldn't enjoy it or anything.
How long ago did you start?
Like I say, might be 4 years.
What would you do with the sexual parts?
Thinking about that was in.
Arthur died only at the age of 43. A month after testifying on Ed's trial, many who knew him said that he was traumatized by what he had seen in that house and completely stressed out about what he had witnessed. Now, just hearing that list alone is gruesome, but physically seeing it's definitely got to be traumatizing. And then, of course, he had to see him again in court, and many people say that he was just as much a victim of Ed as all the other people. Now, during the trial, Ed would plead of not guilty by insanity. Found mentally incompetent and unfit to stand trial, he was sentenced to a maximum facility and then transferred to a Mendoza State Hospital in 1968. His doctors said that he was sane enough to stand trial on November 14th, 1968. And this would only last 1 week because he was found guilty on first-degree murder. But because he was found legally insane, he spent his life in a mental hospital. He died of cancer on the 26th of July, 1984, which I guess is well suited. His house was burned down. Many say that the townspeople burned down this house of horrors before it could be sold. Ironically, Ed's gravesite was often vandalized by souvenir seekers. And of course, the townspeople were horrified when they found out that their family members were dug up. They found out their family members were dug up and what they did with the bodies. And it often had people speculating because Ed would often give people deer meat. And a lot of the peoples wondered if they were actually meat of the victims. Of course, we did have those other victims that went missing, but it was never proven that it was him. so we'll never know what actually happened to them. But imagine that, like, you've been receiving deer meat, and it could have actually been good, human meat. It's disgusting, but thank you for grabbing a brew with me, guys. Please, please, please like and subscribe. It helps my channel to grow, and I will be able to, once I grow and start earning money off of here, I will be posting better quality content and more frequently. But until then, I hope you are staying safe this Halloween, and I'll see you next week for another mystery tale. Thank you, guys. I hope you have an amazing week.